So if you recall, before we went to our lunch break, we were talking about all those barriers that we all run into as we're trying to coordinate or keep a program going or start a program. So what we're going to do this afternoon is kind of list out some of those barriers and talk about how do we try to work around those, and what things should we try, what can we do. So one of the barriers we listed was recruitment. So, this is part of the process. We've got to continually be looking for those mentor and mentee referrals. So I'm going to just guide you through a little bit of how we do that. So we'll talk first about mentor recruitment. You want to have a diverse, active list. You want to have people that are of all different types of backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, different types of disabilities, and the way you get an active volunteer list is by recruiting. So we will have people call the center. We advertise in our newsletter. We put it on our website. We go out and do presentations about peer mentoring and how you can be a peer mentor and share your story. Some of the mentors are people that at one point had mentoring in their lives, whether it was with another program or with us. And so they come to us when they're ready to give back. And then we also get referrals from the staff who say, hey, I met this great person. I think they'd be a good mentor. Can you follow up with them? So that's where our recruitment efforts begin. Support groups are a big, good source of recruitment. I go to support groups all over, and you think about it, support groups are a natural place where people are sharing, right? So if you're recruiting your mentors from some of these support groups, you already know they're probably good about talking about their disability and listening, because those are the skills you need in support groups. So I often go in and am able to recruit people from different support groups at our local hospitals and different areas. Your Disability Resource Center, if you have a university or a college nearby, they can be a good resource. We will advertise at our Disability Resource Center that we have a training coming up. A lot of students have requirements where they need to do an internship or they need to do volunteering, and so that can be a great way. Again, like we were talking about earlier with Barry, it's more short-term, and I know that, but if I can get a student in to come and talk to somebody and mentor them for, they need to do 60 hours, that's great. And they can maybe, talk to some of our youth that are getting ready to think about college or volunteering or what's next. So I put pictures throughout the presentation to remind me to talk about mentors. The girl in the pink there, that's Katie. And Katie is probably the easiest mentor recruitment I have ever had. When I took the job as volunteer manager, her application was already waiting on my desk. So I didn't have to do anything. She was already ready. So she was the easiest person I've ever recruited. But Katie's been with me from the beginning, so we're around in 8 years together, and she is an amazing young adult peer mentor, and so she does a lot of that for us. And so where are we recruiting mentees? We're getting those from people that are already working with the center staff. We will talk a little bit more about how do we encourage the staff to refer and what are some of the challenges there. All of you have a copy of our peer mentor training manual. So I'm going to start referencing some forms and things in that training manual. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on it today because we'll do that a little bit more tomorrow. But if you see me reference a form, you can certainly take a look at it and stop me if you have a question about it. So we have policies for the peer mentors. We have policies for the mentees. So when someone wants to request a peer mentor, we've got a form that they do that. It's on page 123, 124. Hopefully that's right. And so they're filling out, why do I want a peer mentor? What goals do I check off that I need help with? When can I meet with a peer mentor? What good times? So we're having them fill that out. Also, before we begin looking for a peer mentor for the individual, we have them sign a release that allows me to give that peer mentor some information about who this mentee is. The peer mentors can't make an educated decision about whether they want to continue with a match if they don't know a little bit about the person. So I'm never just assigning somebody a mentee. I'm always going in with information about that person, offering that to the peer mentor, and they make the decision about whether they want to try that match or not. So I can't do that unless I know a little bit about that person and am allowed to talk about that individual. So that's why we have that release form as part of the application. A couple of tips. One thing that we've learned over the years is that the more specific we can be on our application, the more information we provide people up front about the Peer Mentor program, the better. So even little things like you'll see on some of the forms that we have for the mentees, just a little statement about how we're going to do the best we can to find somebody that will match up with you. But I can't guarantee that. You know, just little things to do informed consent, so that as the mentee is signing up requesting a peer mentor, they have a better idea of what they're requesting, what they're getting into. It helps you avoid problems down the road when I have to come back and maybe I don't have specifically what they're looking for. I'm not setting someone up for disappointment. I'm doing that proper informed consent, letting them know ahead of time the limits of what I can do. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but we do, if you'll see on the form, there's lots of other things that we do to kind of give people a heads up about what our program is like and what they can expect. So when you're recruiting mentees, it's a really good idea to have a sheet or a flyer or whatever you can do to tell them this is the program. So I think you guys have that. It's a little form that says, you know, welcome to the ABIL Peer Mentor program, and it literally breaks down the rules and what they can expect. So a lot of times people just need that information in order to really be able to say, yeah, I'll try that, or no, I won't. So make sure to have something for your mentees to look at. Marketing is not my background. I'm a social worker. And unfortunately, even today, in social work students, we don't get a lot of marketing. So this is something I've had to learn to do. And luckily, I have colleagues around me that are much better at this than I am. But I do know one thing. It's got to be a clear, concise message. And so sometimes I've certainly had to edit the flyer or the material that I'm using because I'm giving people too much information, or I'm using acronyms, or I'm not making it accessible to people. And so, you know, the more clear you can be in your brochure, the better. And I'll show you ours in just a sec. So you want to make it easy for people to access the information, and you want to be able to easily share that with other organizations in the communities. So we have what we call the Empower list. So we have lots of other agencies on this email server list, and we can send out announcements about trainings and peer mentor trainings, and so it's a great way to kind of blast people about upcoming opportunities. Some of my best marketers are the peer mentors themselves. You know, they get excited about what they're doing. They're going to go out and talk about it. And so sometimes, you know, they're out there, you know, I met somebody who would really benefit from a peer mentor. That's great. As long as they can talk about the program, they know what it's about and the rules and guidelines, they can be a great tool for recruitment. Same thing with the staff. You know, we want to make sure we do some things to make sure that the staff understand the program. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we try to get the staff involved, and so they can know some of the peer mentors and really have an understanding of what they do and don't do. As Amina mentioned earlier, one of the things we did recently was have a couple of our peer mentors come to our staff meeting. And so as a coordinator, one of my frustrations is our staff don't get to know these peer mentors like I do. Because a lot of the peer mentors are out in the community. They're mentoring. They're doing their thing. They're not in the office every day. And so we really have just amazing people that do this for us, but the staff don't always realize, you know, the whole background of somebody. So we had a couple of peer mentors come in, and we purposely picked some newer mentors so that they would be new to almost everybody. And one of them is a professional chef who had a stroke a year and a half ago, and is like, we can't do enough to keep him busy, and he's super excited about IL and helping other people learn cooking skills, and he's going into the rehabs for us and talking to people who are stroke survivors. So for him to tell his story, you know, that I could say use the peer mentors 100 times, but him coming in and sharing his story and why he's excited, why he does what he does, I kid you not, a week later, one of the staff said, I want to do a little cooking group with my consumers. Would he come and teach that? And I'm like, yes, he would love that. So she might not have made that connection if he weren't there in the staff meeting sharing his story. So
also let them know about the newsletter, and we do stories periodically.
Yeah, and we have a monthly newsletter. Probably a lot of you guys do as well. And so we'll feature different peer mentors in the newsletter periodically. And it's like kind of interview style, so they can tell their story, how they ended up in independent living and why they mentor. And so we do that periodically.
Or a mentor match, so they get the idea how it works.
Yeah. So I put this in here. This is our old brochure, which I used for many years, many years longer than I should have, and because I never have liked it really. It's terrible. And because I'm a pretty visual person, so I need to see things. And so this is our new brochure. So sometimes it's, we just got to change our marketing materials, change the way we're talking about a program. This is the brochure we've had for the last year, and just in our second printing of it, we changed something which did not occur to me until we were looking at it again, where you see right there where it says, "Are you interested in talking to a peer mentor?" And I thought, that's too wordy. And so we just changed it to, "Do you want a peer mentor?" And then over here on this side, which is about being a peer mentor, we just changed, "Do you want to be a peer mentor?" Just really clear, being really blunt with people. This is what you do if you want to be one. This is what you want to do if you have one. So
just remember, we're referring them different directions.
Yeah.
We don't want them all calling April, which is what they did for years.
So,
and I'd like to just say something about the people in the picture. So on the left, there's a couple there, Gail and Jack, and they came in and they just really this is the right one, so tell me if I'm wrong. They just wanted to work with people who were amputees.
yeah.
And we didn't have that many referrals. There's an amputee support group in Phoenix and stuff. So they were a couple that came into the group for a while to get them involved because they wanted to be involved. I mean, now they're doing other things. The person with the red hair, the cherries, or Karen, she's the one that went out to the rehab centers, that came to our center and volunteered for like 6 months, and she was living in a rehab center still. Just amazing person, multi-talented. And then Annette is the one that's there when I close the building at night, doing whatever to help out. And she travels. She's, as some people do in Arizona, she's in Arizona some of the months and then in the Midwest in some of the months with her family. And so when she's here, then she just comes in and she'll help us do anything we need and can help do registration at events or pack things or whatever. She's just there. She's everybody's cheerleader, basically.
I met Annette at a stroke support group.
Did you?
I went and did a presentation there, and that's how I met her. And she filled out the application right then and there, which is not usual, but she did.
Yeah, she came to my women's empowerment group once, but she was already too empowered to come again.
A couple things, too. We staged the photos for this. And the first photo shoot, we used, like, people we knew, and it wasn't the actual peer mentors, but we were just thinking, let's get some quick photos. And I looked at those and I was like, I don't like it. And I didn't know what it was. And what I realized later on when I said, let's just get the peer mentors in. They're in next week. Let's take pictures while they're there. They're willing to do that. And what I realized is that we want to see emotion, and who better to show the connections than to use actual people. So that changed the look of our program as far as marketing materials big time.
And the woman down here on the left, on the front of the brochure, Ida, she's the one that works as a personal assistant and is also a peer mentor volunteer.
Mm-hmm. One funny thing about Jack and Gail, I had just taken over the program. I'd probably been in 6 months, and I talked to them on the phone, but I hadn't met them in person. And so we were down at our civic center for a disability expo with a bunch of other disability organizations. And I was coordinating the volunteers. Somebody came and found me and said, there's 2 people looking for you. And they said they're not leaving until they get to meet you in person. And it was Jack and Gail. And so, of course, I was like, oh, so great to meet you. And they were like, we're not happy that you haven't matched us. And I said, well, I haven't had referrals for you to go into the hospital. And I said, but let me think about it. We're coming up with something. And I knew we had this idea of doing the mentoring group. And so I called them back later on, and I said, would you even want to do this? Well, they're very social people. Jack is an amazing advocate. And so they hadn't really thought about doing groups, but they've been a big support for our groups since we started that in 2007. So sometimes, if you can't fill a niche with somebody one way, you can find out another skill that they have and kind of fill that niche.
And they've traveled internationally, so they have a lot to share, like a ASU tourism class. I was doing a disability awareness panel for them, and they were like perfect because they could really address those hospitality issues that they'd experienced.
This is our website, and so just to give you an example, and we are redoing this right now, again, to try to make it less wordy, simplify, and make it a little more visual.
So if you go to our website, how you find it is you click under Advocacy Program, and then you'll find it under that.
All right, so any questions about marketing or thoughts? Okay. So our peer mentors, they must be 18 years old or older. They have to complete an application. You've got a copy of that in our peer mentor training manual. It's in page 121, 122. And they must provide us with 3 character references. We have a simple form that they can fill out. One of the things we're a little bit flexible on is, a lot of people, maybe they don't have a large social network, or they're not working anymore. They don't have employer references. So we'll take references from friends and family and neighbors, and we're pretty flexible there.
Some of their service providers. We do a criminal background check. So we fingerprint and background check all of our volunteers. And this is a state and federal national background check. So I just want to say we do that of all staff now too, and we do that because our liability insurance makes us do it. We didn't used to.
We'll talk about that too in a minute. So the application, other things it asks about, like simple things, like when are you available? How do you feel comfortable talking to somebody? Are you okay on the phone? Do you want to do it in person? Could you do Facebook? All those kind of questions about what's their interest, what skills could you teach. So you'll see on the application we literally have check boxes that people can check off and say, well, I'm not too bad with computers, I could teach this. I'm really good about home management, I could do that. I'm a good budgeter. So people literally check off things that they feel like they could share with somebody. Once they're peer mentor, we put all that information in our database, so it's there. When I get a referral for a mentee, I can look and say, okay, who do I have that's good at budgeting? Who do I have that can get public transportation and go here? So I know, how far are they willing to travel? Do they use the bus? Do they use the light rail? Do they drive? Whatever. I have all of that because of the application, and we keep that information and put that into our database so that I can actually look and run reports and look at all kinds of things about who we have available.
It's an access database, and before we had that, we had a spreadsheet.
And a lot of centers use SillSuite too. And so, with SillSuite, there's some things that you can do to build in reports there. Yeah.
I won't take long, but we're trying to implement a new way to track casual contact with consumers. So people who aren't in Sills First, which we're currently using, people who aren't in our database and who haven't had an information referral. This basic, quick example. I'll go out into the lobby area meeting someone, and they'll get led into a room, and I'll see someone there, and I'll just strike up a conversation with them. And they're just a St. Louis resident, a community member with a disability, and I'll just start chatting with them, and I'll basically complete an information and referral, and I'll refer them to myself. Do you guys have protocol for that, tracking casual contacts? Because we want to show, A, our good work we've been doing, and also that these people have been forwarded through the system, and that we're essentially providing the service of getting them on as volunteers, moving that ball forward. So I'll shut up and listen.
Yeah, no. Thank you. We do. So if someone's a consumer and they go through the intake process, sign up for services, there's a way that we can tag them so it's a consumer file in our database. We do the same thing with the peer mentors. In our database, it's called associate, but that's how we separate them. So there's a peer mentor section and there's a consumer section. But we also have this general section called people. So what it lets us do is just put, they're not an open consumer, maybe they did just come in for a quick INR. We can put in their first and last name. We can just put in an email address or whatever, phone number, whatever we have about them. And that person's name will go into the database as a person that we've met with. And then when we do our activity logs for the day, we can actually pull up that person's name and tie their name to our activity log. So if you sat down and met with someone for 20 minutes, you could put that time in, tie it to their name, even make a note on that activity log, and it's in the database showing that you gave INR.
So, but mostly for those brief ones, we don't do that. We have what we call tick sheets. Then all staff have those available to them, and so it's counted as a simple INR, and we just check their name off, and we check the topic area off. And that's how we do most of that, because most of the people that go in as people in the database are really in there so that they will get a newsletter, or there's certain things that it's triggering for them that may not be a CSR, consumer file. So that tick sheet is where we gather. That way we don't lose as much as we used to lose with all the stuff that goes on fast.
Are you able to still track them electronically?
No, just the numbers get counted over time. That somebody collects them every month from everybody else. The INR person does, along with all of the INRs that she's doing. And she has some kind of a spreadsheet she keeps for those INRs, but they're not in the other consumer database.
But for your example, I mean, if it was somebody that you knew, hey, I'm referring them to me and I'm going to be working with them, I'm going to, or something like that, I'm referring them to a program. I mean, you could, just go ahead and do that quick so that there's documentation of who's worked with this person.
You could. Most times staff don't. I'm just being realistic. That's why we got the tick sheet, because we were losing track. We weren't being able to account for a lot of things that were going on.
Any other questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Maybe I was writing this down, so I might have missed what you guys were saying. But my question is, so you have the access database for the mentor-mentee matching, right? Mm-hmm. But then do you also have, we have our NetSil where we have our client consumer files and information. And so the access isn't really secure. It's just on your computer?
We're networked. And it's all one database that we paid a lot of money to get built and then had to rebuild it once we had it. And it's what we track everything, the PAS program. So we have attendants, we have associates, which are people like our peer mentors. And so for each program that had some specific special needs, like tracking these qualities, we had to then add fields and create new parts to that database.
But I think, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe what you're getting at is that how do you secure that? So, for example, since my program, I'm going to be getting referrals from other programs. Once I have that referral and they're working with a peer mentor, I go in the database and I can pull them in under my program. And because I have a different level of authorization, access,
right.
So I can pull that person in under my program, and I can send notes directly to their hard copy or their electronic file, and I can see what goals they're working on. I can see their file. So that wouldn't be available to anybody else, but once they're referred to my program, then I can access that. Yeah.
Are you having the mentors, though, keep track on, and then they're turning in reports to you?
Yeah.
And what, are you going to go over that? What that
we'll
looks
definitely
like?
talk about that, yeah.
Okay, great. But you're entering the data from the reports that they're giving you.
Yes,
They're not doing it directly.
No, they don't. They don't. But they do a monthly report or more often, depending on as needed.
Another thing that takes time for the volunteer coordinator to do.
Okay, so when we have somebody come, I usually like to have them fill out the application first, and then I'll set up a time to do like a phone or in-person interview and talk with them a little bit more. The application gives me an idea of who they are and what questions I should even ask them in the interview, so that's always helpful to have ahead of time. But really I'm asking them about, why would you want to do this? What skills do you think you can share? And trying to get them to talk more about what they actually envision doing. So, for example, if somebody said, I love kids, I want to work with kids, I'm going to know, hey, this is going to be somebody I'm going to refer on to another program because we don't work with kids. So that screening interview is important for simple things like that, but it also is important because it gives you an idea of somebody's motivation. So if somebody's talking to me about, I want to turn this into a job and come through the training so that I'm certified by ABIL to go and, put a plaque up on my door, I know that's not what we do. I know this person is probably not looking for what we offer, and it's not going to be a good fit.
Or if they talk nonstop and can't stop
Right.
and listen, then we have a pretty good idea they won't be able to mentor very well until they improve their listening skills, that kind of stuff. So it's also kind of personality qualities as well as skills and interests.
I think one of the things I've learned doing some of these kind of interviews and screening is it's okay to not be sure. Sometimes I walk out of an interview and I think, well, that went good, but I still have, I don't know, they said this and I don't know, I got to think about that or whatever it is. Or I think, I've had people come through the training and I have one mentor he is just straightforward and blunt, and I thought, I don't know if that's, and really he has a soft, mushy side that you don't know that until you get to know him a little bit. And that's what comes out when he's mentoring. He's not like that when he's mentoring people, but he can be very direct.
Or before you came, we had one that was like that, and we knew where to use him appropriately, but we knew where not to use him. And he knew we knew, so we would all laugh about that. But he wanted to be involved, and he wanted to do something.
And that's what's great about the training is spending so much time in the training, you really get to know people a little bit better and have a better idea of, the screening gives you a chance to, any red flags or anything you want to follow up on, you can still do that in the training. Character reference, it's really important to check references, even if you feel like, oh, this is somebody our center knows, or this was referred by staff. You always want to check those character references and document that. It's just a good practice, and you would be surprised some of the things that come up when you're doing that. Our reference asks, how long has the individual known the person? Have you ever known them to abuse alcohol, drugs? Things like dependency. Are they patient? Do they have care and concern for others? Rate their level of responsibility, those kind of things. So, again, to help us get a better picture of who the applicant is. Page 108 and 109 in our training manual, we have our rules and guidelines form. So the mentors, we actually go over this at the peer mentor training, and they have to sign this before they start mentoring with us. But really, the reason why we've noted this here is because it's really something you want to think about before you start recruiting people. Sometimes when we're not getting what we want as far as our recruitments, it's because we haven't identified really what we want. We haven't written it down and said, this is who we're looking for. These are the skills we want people to have.
So, April, I want to just check, because I know people are looking around. So, are people getting copies of the manual for this training, Daryl?
Yes.
Yes. And you do have them. Okay, good. I just want, because I noticed a lot of paper shuffling. I want to make sure people knew where they were looking for what.
Amina?
Yeah.
The large print version has different pages, that's why.
Okay, thank you. All right. Sorry.
Plus, it's just a big monster document.
It
takes a while to
is.
flip through it. So the rules and guidelines, I can't tell you how many people I talk to where they're really frustrated about recruiting, and I'll say, well, who are you looking for? What do you care about at your center? What's the goals you guys need most? And that's where they've kind of missed the piece, is they're recruiting, but they haven't ever told somebody what they want, what they're looking for. So really being able to break down, this is what we want in a peer mentor, it kind of sets the groundwork for really being able to actually go out and recruit that. So we want somebody that maintains confidentiality. We want somebody that is going to understand boundaries. This isn't a dating relationship. This is a mentoring relationship. What's the difference to that? So we cover all that training. And also your rules and guidelines form is important because that's how you hold people accountable. So if something happens that is not part of your rules and guidelines, they've gone against that, that's how you correct someone and remind them of what we expect. This is what we expect from our peer mentors. We'll talk a little bit more about confidentiality and our crisis policy as well. Again, the mentors are agreeing to have regular contact, but how they do that is up to them. So this is one of our peer mentors, Jim, on the left-hand side. And when I met Jim, he told me in his interview, he said, I really prefer to work with women. And to me, that's always interesting because I prefer to have people be a little more open. Yeah, do you need me to stop for a sec? Yeah.
Am I on? Okay. I was one of those people shuffling because I was trying to look ahead, make sure I didn't ask the question prematurely before you're going to cover it, but I don't see it in here. What about turning people down?
Yeah.
Because obviously you do, and how do they accept that? And then also about when you need to get rid of somebody, if you did accept them and it was a mistake to accept them.
Okay, I'll definitely talk about that. Thank you. Let me finish with Jim. So Jim came in and he's like, I just want to work with women. So that's kind of always a little bit of a red flag to me, just when somebody has a specific idea. And so I said, hey, we do mainly male to male, female to female matches. And I said, so I'm probably not going to be matching you with a female. And so I was real upfront with him about this is our program. So if you're looking for that, that's not what I'm going to do.
Plus, he's about 6'5". He's a big, southern drawl, intimidating kind of a guy. So,
and after getting to know Jim, the reason why he preferred women was because he had been attacked by somebody on the bus, and it was a male, and he was still dealing with his own post-traumatic stress about that.
Like a big teddy bear.
Yeah. And so I said, hey, Jim, this is the limits. And he said, well, let me think about it. I said, come through the training, you think about it. So afterwards he said, okay. He said, I'll try it. And so he did. And he's been with us for 4 years. And what was cool about Jim is he has continued to work on himself and really worked. When I first met Jim, he said, I will not do any phone mentoring. He said, I got to be in person with somebody. So that was okay with me. I'm like, that's great. We can have you just do in person. And he wouldn't even spend 2 minutes on the phone with me. Now we're up to about 20-minute conversations. So he's somebody that's continued to grow and progress. Carrying a lot of these, some of the things that have happened with him have shaped how he feels comfortable. But we were able to work with him on some things. As long as I'm clear about what I can work with somebody on, fine, you can meet in person, that's okay. But I was clear what I couldn't do, which is, the male to female. So a lot of times, being up front with people, to your question, it's always difficult if I have somebody come through and I think, wow, this is just, they're not appropriate, they're not ready. For me, I have some hard and fast rules. In order to be a mentor, you have to have some skills. You've got to be organized. You've got to show up for your appointments. I'm not going to put somebody in a position where, because of their own lack of organizational skills or their lack of communication skills, that the mentee would be hurt by that. So that's what helps me be really firm about what we're looking for, because I know that on the flip side of that, they're going to be working with our consumers, and it's my job to make sure that this peer mentor has the skills that they need to be able to do that and to successfully work with our consumers. So it's a hard conversation. A lot of the times it's just sitting down with people and just saying, this is what I've noticed. We mentioned that the lady that came through the training that is a very good advocate but just does not have good people skills. And so I sat her down after the training and I said, everything I've heard you talk about is your community work and how you love doing that. And so we started there and we talked about that, and I said, I don't want anything to take away from what you love doing. It doesn't seem like this is what you love doing. And so I talked about other things. I referred to David and Amina, who are our advocacy specialists, and I was able to kind of channel her that way. That same training class, I had another gentleman that came in, and he has a traumatic brain injury, and just going through the training class, just things that I heard from him that just sounded very angry, and he would kind of launch into, Social Security's out to get me kind of things. And
Extremely bitter person
Very,
at that
yeah.
point in his recovery.
At that point, yeah. And so after the training, I sat down and I said, I heard you say this, I heard you say that, and, I see so much emotion, and so that's how I started the conversation. Where we ended up was, him really saying, hey, maybe I need to work on some things before I do this. And he actually agreed. He's come to our
He keeps
mentoring
coming.
group. He keeps coming.
He keeps coming, and he smiles more often now. He doesn't argue with me when I say why it's important to vote or whatever. I go in there to do a prep talk. It's really interesting. Yeah, he's really moving through it. I wanted to say a couple more things about Jim because, number one, Jim turned out to be the #1 sight guide for the chair of our Arizona Council of the Blind, person who has been a prominent member of our Arizona Disability Advocacy Coalition, so much so that we've now hosted their last 2 annual conferences and taught other mentors how to be sight guides for Barbara, who is a female, as it turns out, and he escorts her to all kinds of meetings now. And then on his own decided to start taking all of those ADA webinars that we always host every month. So it's kind of interesting. And he came and did get out the vote calls, and I didn't know he had a problem about phone calling. He did just fine on those calls. So people change over time. I've already saw many people said that's what you love about independent living, that chance to meet people at these really important transitions and walk through it with them and watch the transformation. It's very inspiring.
I think I have one more to do. And
Okay.
do you want me to, no, actually, you know what? I'll let you do this one.
Well, okay. All right. Whatever.
And then I think one question
Seamless
from Barry.
transition. Go ahead. You can ask, but I don't have to tell.
Okay, thanks. So I noticed that your mentors are covered under your liability policy.
They are.
And I also noting that you give a lot of freedom, relatively, for them to develop relationships and kind of natural friendships with people. How do you address the question of a consumer wanting to get a ride with someone or a mentor offering a ride? Do you leave them the freedom to work that out as a informal relationship, or are you strict about you don't give rides to people that doesn't work under your liability?
Nope, we do not allow them to transport each other in their vehicles. That's not...
That's not saying they don't do it sometimes, but we're very clear about that they shouldn't do it, and it helps also that...
They better not be doing it.
That also helps that... Well, we don't know everything they're doing, but let's say we've never had an accident reported with that, or it's never come back to us, and that also protects the mentors from needing to turn down a mentor to get them in that situation. I say that because they were no longer mentor and mentee, but I know a pair, I'll say a pair, of 2 gentlemen who became deep, long-time friends who rode across country together. But it was after they were no longer in our program, but they started out as mentor and mentee. So...
And truly, I mean, again, it's about getting the right people in the training, but we truly find that they are pretty conscientious and really do try to follow the rules. And we have rules about gifts and things like that, and I'll have somebody, inevitably, around the holidays, one of the mentors will call and say, my mentee knitted a blanket for me, is that okay? So they're really, really careful about, a lot of times, about really following the guidelines that we give them.
I'd say the big one that's legal is and our staff are not supposed to transport consumers either. So, and I'm not supposed to either. Okay, so again, in that class that I took at San Diego State University, we had this whole big thing about duty to report policies and how you needed to have that at your agency. And so we developed that for our staff first and then basically just modified it a little. It's very similar for the peer mentors. And they have to read through that, go over it with April, and sign that they agree and know about it. And it outlines requirements of what to do if their mentee was expressing some ideations about killing themselves or hurting themselves, or any homicidal ideations, or any incident of abuse, that they have some information about staff or another mentor or anything like that. And so we let them know, and again, this goes back to the volunteer coordinator having an open door policy so that they know they can come and let her know. And what we let them know is we don't want them to be alone. Their job isn't to solve that problem. Their job is to call April with any of those issues. And she takes it from there and then follows through on our policy. And our policy goes level by level so that it gets reported all the way up to her supervisor and to the CEO. Because where you can get into problems is things get hung up midway because whoever it is midway in management can't believe that could be happening. Could be part of the problem. More often can't believe it's happening. They want to protect the staff person or whatever is going on, or they don't know what to do. All of our supervisors are not trained in what to do if somebody's suicidal. This actually helps them calm down because their mind worries about what if something comes up they can't handle as a mentor. That's their biggest worry, except for a few people who are so narcissistic. Thank you. That they don't think about somebody else, and then those people don't likely make it through the training to become matched as mentors because that's not a good quality to have as a mentor. So we have it in writing. It's very clear. We talk about it in the training, and she talks about it one-on-one with them too, so that's very clear. And they sign something, they get a copy. We have a copy, so everybody knows we've done that. And that's not because we don't trust them, but that's to help them feel more secure that that's not their job. But that it is important if they notice it to say something. That's all that's their job, because we don't want to ignore it. Yeah.
It looks like you stopped short of requiring them to report to APS. So
What's a PS?
APS, Adult Protective
APS.
Services?
No, they do not do that.
Okay, so April, are you on call 24/7?
We have a system in place. We'll talk a little bit about it later on, but we do have a system in place for what they would do to report if
in after hours.
After hours and when I'm not there, like today. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, because somebody, I mean, if there's a
Right.
suspected abuse, somebody
Right.
has to report it, and it
Right.
can't necessarily wait if it happened.
That's
They find
right.
out on Friday, and you don't hear about it until Monday.
That's right. So we do have that in place. And remember, they're not liable. They're not staff. We're liable if somebody tells us. So it's at the point it gets to us that then we have a duty to report to whoever it is that we would report to.
We'll talk a little bit more about the more specifics of the policy
And
later
this
on.
rarely has come up in all these years. It has come up. It has come up in this last year. We had somebody that was a real issue that had that concern and making sure they had enough staff support and whatever. But it's very rare, interestingly. So, am I in control? Yeah, there you go. So, as we said, we have that criminal self-disclosure form indicating they have no felony victims in our state. They need to fill that out while they're waiting to get the background check approved. So we ask them to sign that statement, and that's a legal document we've been given that is that statement. It's the same one, again, staff have to fill out. And then mentors must do the fingerprint background check. So that's always interesting for any of those who have fingers like me, trying to get the background check done. I always fail those fingerprint things. Yeah.
So are the volunteers then not mandatory reporters?
They're not, by our state law in Arizona, they're not mandatory reporters.
Okay.
We do in our state have something like a good citizen law, which means that nobody can be held responsible for trying to help somebody in an emergency, which is another thing that supports them. But they don't have any, no, they don't have, they're just like anybody on the street as far as that goes. They don't have that. But with our program, they do have that role that they need to tell us. We don't want them to hold on to it. And because we talk about it out loud, I'm an old crisis counselor. So, you know, when you talk real frankly and out loud about these things, then, of course, anybody who has experience with these things will come and talk to you more about their own experience usually, because they know it's safe to talk about it because you're not pretending it doesn't happen. And so we may find out about the mentor has a history or whatever, but because and in the mentor group, if somebody's got an issue going on, they're not talking specifically about who it is, it will come up sometimes, and then it's a good chance for everybody to have that reminder why we have these rules.
Well, and I think in Oregon that...
Mike?
I guess I think in Oregon that the ORSs indicate that once they are trained as peer mentors, they are required to report.
I mean,
We don't have anything in our state about who's a trained peer mentor.
I'll jump in here
Okay.
too.
For OHA, or,
So,
yeah.
yeah, remember we talked about checking with your state to see what their definition of peer support is? That's why you do that. So in some states, they already have that where peer support is, the definition of peer support is different, and it's, they're going to have different requirements. Colorado's in the process of changing or looking into changing some of their stuff. So in Arizona right now, it's a voluntary position, but and they're not mandatory court reporters. But that's why you want to check with your state to find out what's their definition, what are they calling it, what are their individual requirements.
However, the peer mentors in the mental health system are getting paid,
Yeah.
and they have a different requirement.
Yeah. So it really have to check with your state about what the difference between paid and volunteer is too.
So people are always nervous about this, and it hasn't been an issue. But I believe one of the biggest reasons it hasn't been an issue because we talk about it, and it's up front, so that if it does arise, there's a chance to problem solve early on. Yeah.
So if you find that one of your mentors has done something inappropriate, do you have a procedure as far as, are they discharged instantly, or do they have some kind of warning, or what is
If
that?
they're accused of an abuse situation, then they are immediately taken off duty, just like a staff person would be while there's some kind of an investigation. So they're asked, and the mentee would be told that they're not able to be a mentor at this point, and we do an investigation. I don't believe that's ever happened, except the one time prior to April coming that I said this guy was dating around, and we were worried it would get into other kinds of taking advantage of.
Also, just to mention, and again, we talk about this a little bit more in depth, but just to reassure people, we do have kind of a committee, our CEO, Amina, Gwen, our PAS director, who does a lot of this background check stuff with the attendants. So if we get something that comes in and we're looking at, I remember, if you saw this lady, you would think, sweet little grandma, and she was. She was about 70 when she came to peer mentor with us. But when she was 18 years old, she had felony shoplifting. And so, here it is all these decades later, and she was able to mentor with us because we were able to do some documentation that, this person, has had a clean record for so long that, this isn't applicable.
So
to
even
who
our
they are.
PAS program is like that in some cases, even if something comes back on the background check, they may be able to continue with the program depending on what it was, when it was, how long ago it was. Wasn't harm to person.
Yeah, absolutely. No one would be allowed to volunteer if they've harmed others.
Well, and as I said, our liability. So the procedure, if they don't pass the background check, is we call them in and we're just up front with them about why. And there was somebody that we had to turn down that had a felony, right?
Yeah,
A gentleman.
we've had, and in our state, and I think this is true in most states, if certain types of convictions, someone can appeal that to have that removed from their record. So we had a peer mentor, again, something when he was 18, he's now 50. And so he went through the process with the courts and to have that removed from his record, and we knew that he was doing that. He was on hold until he had that finished for us.
And that's the same thing they have to do to get their right to vote back, and so we encourage people to actually do that. They might not have, just need a little support and direction to know how to go about doing that. It's not that hard. All they have to have done in Arizona anyway is they have to have served their sentence and paid their fine if there is one. If they've done both of those things, then they can move out of that limited status.
Just real quick, I mean, the ones that are the hard calls are people where you can see that they, that they have really good intentions and that they care about people, but they just don't have a skill, or they're not able or willing to conform to the rules. So there was a gentleman we had, this was years ago when I first took over. He really believed that people with spinal cord injuries could, if they did certain things like what he had done, could have return of feeling and movement. And I sat and talked with him, Amina sat and talked with him. We really felt like he was kind, not malicious, but we could not convince him that a peer mentor's role was not to give medical advice. And, that could not be something that he would talk to somebody about. And so that was difficult. He cried when we told him that we couldn't have him. And we were very clear about why we couldn't do it, but we just didn't feel like we could take the risk that he wouldn't do that and it wouldn't cause harm to somebody.
And that's a tricky quality, to be a really compassionate person, which April is, and very protective of her volunteers, and at the same time be very matter-of-fact and clear with them about what the boundaries are. And that's the earth quality I talk about that's just so valuable in this role, because occasionally we do have to turn people down. We do have to tell them why, and nobody likes to do that.
No, not fun.
So we always check character references, as April said. We do the background checks. You have to check your center's liability insurance to see what it is that they're needing. Like I said, we didn't used to do that. There are different kinds of background checks, which we had always done one particular kind. Then we found out from the sports and fitness center staff, the recreational staff, that they knew there was a way to go through the city of Phoenix instead of the state to do it. Any of us who do WIPO, we have to go through this federal thing. I thought that's why they let me go through a special line when I went to the airport this time, but they let her in too, so it wasn't that. So there are different kinds of background checks too, so you have to know what it is your liability insurance is requiring. If they are requiring, for years they didn't, but now they do. So we didn't use to background check staff either. But once we started doing it to staff, we started doing it for. So that was an additional monetary commitment, because I think it's about $45.
No, it's $65.
$65 now. It keeps going up. So. Okay, I think.
And that's actually right there.
Yeah. So. Thank you. So before we launch into the next section, we're going to do a little thing I like to call think and listen. And so you can just get a partner. So you can just turn to somebody that's next to you. So find your partner and find out who's going to be A and who's going to be B.
Thank you. Who's A and who's B? What's that? You've done this before?
So if you're uneven, then you can travel. So this person needs a partner. Would somebody come and be a partner with her that's uneven at their table? So you're getting an A and a B person, and you're getting partners. So who does not have a partner? Come right over here, Pam. You're going to, you two ladies have the same kind of power energy. That'll be good. So everybody else have a partner. You know who's A in your partnership? Raise your hands. Okay. You got an A over there in that partnership? Okay, great. Okay, great. Don't make me choose. Okay, so we're just going to, this is just going to be like for a minute and a half. You're going to take turns being a thinker and a listener. I know some people are natural thinkers, out loud talkers like me, and some are really natural listeners, but we're going to trade. So while the talker is talking, the listener is going to listen to the person talking like they are a treasure box opening up in front of them. Okay? And so and you're just going to be beaming at them while they tell you their story. And then you're going to switch. I'm going to time it, and you're going to switch. So it's not very long, so you can surely, us talkers can listen for a minute and a half, right? And then you'll switch, and then the listener will be the talker, and the talker will be the listener. So now you know the topic. Oh, you don't know the topic yet.
We're going to make that up too?
Pardon me?
A and B, so would A be listener?
I haven't said who's the listener. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that part. First, I have to tell you the topic, right? So the topic is going to be what you've heard so far. What's on the top of your head right now? So you've listened, you got to ask a bunch of questions. So just what's boiling up in you right now? It might actually be about, whether you're going to go with me Macy's shopping after this. I don't know. Whatever it is. And the listener, when you're the listener, everybody's going to be a listener eventually. So what are you going to be like as a listener? Quiet. And what are you going to be?
Enthusiastic. Engaged. Beaming.
Listening to them as if they're a treasure box opening up, right? Which they are. So there's an opportunity. I'm going to make you move around more next time we do this. So you'll be doing it with somebody you don't know more. So, okay. So in this case, A's will be the listener and B's will be the talker first. So B's job is to just talk. What are you thinking so far? You've been here. You've been having stuff crammed into your brain's zipping around, or maybe it's going to sleep right now. And so A's going to listen, B's going to talk, and then I'll say switch, and then A's will talk and B's will listen. So, and when you're listening, don't think of what you're going to say next. It's only a minute and a half. Just listen. Beaming at the treasure box opening up, okay? Are you ready? Any questions? Go. You guys did such a good job. Weren't they really a treasure box opening up in front of you? Yes. How great is that? So we're going to carry on. This is the last little part of this afternoon. Tomorrow we're going to go over the whole training process in much more detail. So April's going to start talking to you about the beginning of that, this orientation and training piece. And then we'll still have a little bit of closure time for follow-up questions and, kind of wrapping up the day too. So thank you.
Okay. So our peer mentor training class is mandatory for all of our peer mentors. Whether they're going to do the one-on-one mentoring or if they're going to do groups, it's mandatory. What's great for me as a trainer is that it's not me standing up there for 2.5 days talking, but our staff come in and they take turns, and so we'll get our early intervention coordinator who goes into hospitals. What a perfect person to do the grieving and adapting to disability piece of our training than him. That's his whole job, and so he'll come in and do that piece, and different staff will pick and choose what section they'd like to share. And it's always staff that are going to be working with the mentees. So it's their chance to start getting to know the new crop of peer mentors, putting a name with the face. So when I call them and they say, hey, I have a match for your consumer, they're going to know who this peer mentor is because they've already met them at the training. It's also a great way for the mentors to kind of learn from the staff more about what they do and kind of get oriented to ABIL in a deeper way. We also do something fun at lunchtime. We bring in some of our longtime peer mentors, and they'll come in and answer questions. And it's kind of just a free-for-all. I let people shout out questions, and they get to kind of pick the peer mentor's brains and really, talk to somebody who's done this for a while and can answer questions. So that's always fun. And then, of course, they receive that peer mentor training manual, which is something that you have a copy of as well. So some of the things we put into the training manual are things that we've learned we've needed over the years. So even though most of our participants in the training have some sort of disability, many people, it's their first time to IL. And so we do include pieces about independent living philosophy and people first language and disability awareness, because a lot of the people that we're working with, this is brand new information to them. And so it's our chance to kind of indoctrinate them, get them excited about what is independent living. We also will, at the training, we will go through each of the forms that we're required for the peer mentor to sign. As we mentioned earlier, the volunteer duty to report is something we go into in detail. We kind of call this our pass the buck policy. And the reason why is literally, legally, ethically, morally, the volunteer's responsibility is to pass that buck, so to speak, on to me. And so we really train them that their responsibility is to report, to get help for their mentee. And so they are required to notify me immediately about any expressions of threat to self, suicidal threats, or homicidal threats. And if the supervisor, me, cannot be reached, my voicemail prompts them of how to contact a staff person directly. So right now, while I'm at the training, we have a staff person who is a licensed clinical social worker who is on call if there's an issue with one of our matches or one of our peer mentors needs support. So we have a plan in case I'm not available for them to do that. So to break down our manual, we'll go a little bit more in depth, and you can see that we'll do that a little bit more tomorrow. But again, we include a bunch of different categories: self-advocacy, that's so important, goal planning. But we really look at this as, again, our opportunity to get to know these people. Who are they? What do they care about? What are they excited about? And we really try to keep in mind that we don't want to be afraid to train people. It's okay to have some rules and guidelines and really talk about those hard topics. I remember my very first training that I did, probably talking with Amina and saying, you know, I'm nervous about this crisis intervention piece. And I was. I thought, you know, what kind of questions am I going to get? You know, are people going to give me a hard time? You know, are they going to be freaked out? And really what I learned was, as long as we are able to guide people through the process, they're relieved, you know. And that's usually one of the quicker sections I do the training on, because the way the policy is laid out, it's pretty black and white. They know what to do. It's like, okay, got it. So, you know, you can't be afraid to kind of have some of those more harder conversations. That's what the training is about. And people need to know who you are and what you believe. So what an opportunity to really get people excited about IL and what we do. How can they volunteer with us if they don't know who we are and what they believe? They've got to make sure that their philosophy lines up with our philosophy. I remember this was right before I came. I heard about this training when I came over. They had a lady come in, very nice lady, but through the training, she discussed that she believed that in euthanasia. And so she brought this conversation out, and she was a person with a disability. And so, you know, it gave us a great time to say, well, this is why, you know, this is what IL says about that. And, you know, in the end, she decided, you know, we weren't a good fit, and that was okay. So it's your chance to make sure that people really understand who you are, what we believe. And we do some disability history piece, which is fun to stick in there and really educate people about our past and where we're going as a movement. Some of them, mentors need to be treated individually, so some of them need very little supervision from me. You know, they've done this a long time. They know what they've got to call me about. They know how to report. Others need a lot more assistance, you know, and so, you know, I might be talking to somebody every week if they've got a challenge. But if somebody's really got it, they might be calling me at the end of the month to report and catch me up. I might be talking to somebody every day if they're dealing with a lot of challenges. So it's kind of having an open door policy that when they need assistance, that they know that we're going to provide that support. And again, that individuality is figuring out what do they like, what do they want to do. So some people, the groups, they love it. Other people, I don't get to know people as well unless I'm one-on-one. So people have their preferences, and we do try to take that into consideration. So for documentation, you do want to document in the consumer service record. Peer support, peer mentoring was provided, and whether it was provided individually or in a group. And so you're going to want to track those mentor-mentee contacts, whether it's in the peer support group that you do or whether it's one-on-one. And as we mentioned earlier, you're going to want to track the goals and do updates. And so we can run reports from our database about when are the goals needing to be updated. Have we done our documentation for goals on this match? We also track our volunteer hours. We had a question about that earlier, about that documentation. We have a simple form that it's in your book somewhere. I think in the form section in the back. And it's, you know, brief little what we did. I always tease the mentors, I don't need to know what coffee you drank at Starbucks when you met with somebody. But, you know, generally what goal was worked on and what's the plan for next time. How many hours? And then, as Amina said, we also have them track any travel reimbursement. And they do that at the end of the month. My job is also to meet regularly with the staff that have referred this person, because the staff, once they refer, they don't want this person to go in a black hole and they never know what the peer mentor and the mentee are working on. And so my job is to facilitate that communication and keep the staff up to date. Last week we had a mentor email an update. He was concerned that his mentee might quit this new job. He said, so he called me and said, hey, he's just really frustrated. Let the staff know. And so I, sent that staff a quick email and said, hey, contact him. He's really struggling this week. And so it was like pulling in all the team. Somebody's in trouble this week. They're really frustrated. Let's let everybody know so that this person can have support. So my job is to, kind of collect the updates from the mentors and then let the staff know what are they working on, what's going on with somebody, what's the progress. So as Amina had said earlier, I'm the primary contact for all the mentors. And really, for me, it's the best part of my job is talking with them and watching them use their experiences and share their stories. And, the trusting relationship that they know if they have a question that I'm going to get back to them as quickly as I can. Or if they call and say, April, I need a number for the food bank in this area, that I'm going to get that and get that information to them. Because we don't want them to feel like they're the only resource for somebody. We want them to know that this is a team effort, and when they need something, that I'm going to be responsive. One of the things we found really helpful over the years is that we've got to help the mentors focus on what we're accomplishing. So a lot of times, as you all know, when we're working with somebody, there can be times where you see somebody just click, 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 reach that goal. Other times it's more about the baby steps. And so we really take many opportunities to celebrate accomplishments. We do that with the matches. We also do that as an agency to really honor and celebrate the peer mentors for what they do. They're volunteers. They don't have to do this. They're choosing to do this. And so for us, we've really found a lot of value in taking time to celebrate and recognize them. And so we do that a couple of ways. We have an annual holiday party. It's in December, of course, and so we get the mentors and mentees together. They invite a guest. A lot of them will bring a family or friend, and we, sometimes have a little small grant that we get to do a little bit extra. Other years we don't. So it's really focused on just having a fun celebration around the holidays. Occasionally we have some funds to do a little gift card. Last year we had a little bit of money to do a T-shirt, and so. Just little things like that to let people know that that you're thinking about them. And it's not really the monetary value of the item. I mean, I write about 5 or 6 thank you notes or thinking of you notes every week, and it's about really just saying to somebody, hey, what you did really mattered. I was a couple weeks ago in the Living Well class with one of my peer mentors co-facilitates that group. And I was in training and presenting that day, and just as he was talking, I just thought, everything he said, I was like, ooh, good. And he was just spot on, and I had to send him a card and say, man, I really appreciate you. That is amazing what you do in that group. So sometimes it is just about that phone call or that email to say thank you. We have an annual event that we call the Spirit of ABIL Awards. And so this is a reception where we honor the peer mentors and volunteers. And so we usually have a peer mentor of the year. And this year we did something different. We did the match of the year. So we honored a mentor and mentee who had worked together and just really had amazing progress and something that we were really excited about what they were doing together. We also recognize people for 1 year, 5 year, 10 year of service. And we hadn't had a lot of people get to those milestones. And it's funny, the last few years we had our first 15 year, we had our first 4, 5, 10 years. So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing to have volunteers that last that long. It's really
seriously,
amazing.
Yeah. If I was doing this training with just volunteer coordinators, they would all be pretty jealous, because that doesn't happen in the world of volunteer coordination. You don't usually get people to stay that long. That's not usual. We do a plaque, we do certificates, we try to give a gift card. So just it's really about regularly recognizing what people are doing for you. And this is something that we are always trying to get better at. Amina and I had just talked about let's get some of these stories added into our report, because we sometimes know what's happening, but maybe our board members don't fully understand what's happening. And so that's something that we're kind of always working on. And we'll do, like we said, stories that are in our newsletter, up on the website, to give people an idea about the great work.
What the heck are we doing?
What the heck are we doing? So, again, pictures to remind me to talk about people. This is Wendell on the left. He's one of our peer mentors. And talk about screening and looking at somebody. Wendell came through and so he said, well, I don't know if you're going to have anybody because, I just want to work with stroke survivors and I want to work with somebody around my age, And he said, most of the stroke survivors I know are really a lot older, and he said, I want to connect with people that I can help get active. And so I said, Wendell, come through the training and let's see what happens. And so he started mentoring with us. He mentors at a couple of other hospitals. And he got matched up with Steve. And, Steve was just a few months out from his stroke, and they really connected because they had the same type of injury in the same area of the brain, so you can even see from that picture. But Steve, a whole new world opened up for him because, Wendell can drive. Wendell is working. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, Steve got his driver's license again. So it's just really those kind of things, the kind of work that people do, and the commitment that they make to each other to share and support each other. And Steve has now gone through our peer mentor training and is doing a lot of work for us. So very cool. And then this is a group of our other honorees. We honor people for their volunteer work, so people that come in and help us at events and different things, we'll honor them for that work as well at the
third
awards.
woman in, Carmen. Carmen started out in our This Is My Life program that was outreaching people with developmental disabilities, and it was kind of stagnant for a while. She took the Living Well class and got through about half of it. She doesn't read very well at all, and just kept hanging around, and she started doing general volunteering, and then she ended up going out to the schools and changed. Bam, that was her button. She's great, and they love asking her questions because she's a person with a developmental disability. She is married. She's living on her own. She gets some help from family and other people. She's had support from ABIL off and on, a little here and there, teaching herself advocacy skills and that kind of thing for probably off and on 10 years, but basically living independently. But who knew? She was like a mouse. She would never speak out loud in front of anybody. I'm sure she had gotten, crap in school and that kind of thing. But with the students, she lit up, and I didn't know that was going on. I found out later from her when she said that's who she was going to nominate. I didn't even realize that she was now doing that. So another just great example, and the woman next to her, Sammy. Sammy has loss of vision, and it's progressive. And she's just determined to learn how to be independent. And so her issue is her family that doesn't think she can be independent, right? And so she's somebody who's learned a lot from the other mentors and is a mentor herself. So it's just an amazing group of people.
Sammy's a good example of one of those people that I interviewed and I wasn't sure. And that's because with her low vision, Sammy is constantly trying to orient to a room and to lighting and situations. So she has a very blank, flat affect. And so I was like, I'm not sure if I'm getting through. I don't know if she likes this. And so she went through the training, and she came up to me after and she said, well, I think I'll do the groups for right now. I'm not ready for one-on-one. I said, great. And so she came to the groups for about a year and a half. And, I just kind of see little things happening, her connecting with people, her jumping in and supporting somebody. And, flip to a couple years later, and she's amazing. She has a very difficult match right now where she's matched with somebody who has a terminal diagnosis. And, you know, I'm thinking I'm matching them because it's both progressive. Well, Sammy was a caregiver for her husband who died of cancer. So what they've really connected about is Sammy understands some of those end-of-life issues. And so the mentor's like, you know, how do I help my kids? What did you do to, you know, grief support? And they are just amazing, really beautiful the way Sammy has stepped in and been able to support this lady. And so, you know, sometimes you give people a chance to grow and then before you know it, they're just surprising you.
Yeah,
doing
and she just
incredible
turns
things.
out to have like one of those people with a, she's a slow burner, you know, but persistent and stubborn. And she's really explored a lot of technology that's available to people with vision loss and now shown a lot of other people technology that could help them and kind of spurred them on to think about how can they get help to pay for it and this kind of thing. Because she's been quite assertive about getting that for herself. And she's a really good advocate in that area.
And we've seen her definitely get more in tune with the advocacy piece. You know,
Yep.
she's come to the legislature and done
ever
some
since
stuff
she went
there.
down to the Capitol and rioted with us. Yep.
Yeah. A couple of things about program evaluation. I mentioned that we do evaluations after we match someone. So we're going to do an evaluation with the mentor and the mentee. So I have peer mentor evaluation forms. The staff have mentee evaluation forms. So after we match somebody, we're going to do a 1-month evaluation, 3 months, 6 months if the match goes that long. We're asking things about like how often have you met, are you comfortable, are you working on goals? And so evaluation is really critical. That helps me know, are things working? Do we need more resources? Do we need to change something? And what we've really found is that 1-month evaluation is really important. And even sometimes I'll do it sooner than that because if there is a problem, if something's not clicking or personalities aren't gelling, you know, the quicker that I can step in and fix that and provide support or even rematch somebody if I need to, the better. So if we kind of let things go on and people aren't comfortable or aren't satisfied or happy, we're probably going to lose them. And that's true for the mentor and the mentee. So early, consistent evaluation is really, really important for us. And this is the piece where you get your outcomes. How do I know if this thing is making a difference? How do I know if the peer mentor is working on goals? How do I know if we're making progress? We have to ask people. We have to get their opinion. We have to do these evaluations. So we record all of our evaluations. And what people do, they're sent a link to the evaluation. They fill it out. It's uploaded into Google Docs. And I copy it into an Excel chart that we've programmed to run reports. And so I can look at, you know, what are people saying about I was matched quick enough, or how many times on average are our matches meeting every month, or how many people said they made progress on their goal. We can look at all of those things and run reports to know whether we're actually doing what we're saying we're doing. Another kind of fun thing that we like to look at is what kind of goals are we getting asked to do. So I can tell you the most requested goal this last year was self-esteem. I want somebody to support me and help me grow more confident in my disability. That's the #1 request we had. It wasn't public transportation. It was self-esteem. So if you're tracking all of these things, it's not that hard to do if you know what you want to track. And that was kind of our hard part is, you know, we continually have times where we go back and say, well, let's modify this a little bit. We've never asked this before. Let's start tracking that. And so figuring out what you care about, what you want to know, questions about what's working, what's not. That's how you're going to get your outcomes is by doing these evaluations.
And I would say how we, why we learned about that 1 month was, I told you I had a couple of volunteer coordinators that weren't doing a very good job, and so that's where I really learned the hard way why it's so important that there's more than one side checking in to see, so in other words, the staff checking in with the mentee and the volunteer coordinator checking in to see, is this match actually working? Have they really connected? And are they being in touch with each other? Because that's, if it goes on and it's not working, it gives the program a bad name, it causes dropouts of mentors and mentees both. because they don't need another rejection, right? They already came here with enough problems. So that turned out to be very important. And this evaluation piece is a little bit of a struggle to get the staff to follow up and do these evaluations as well. Some staff are on it like a dog on a bone because they want to know what's going on. And the notes that April puts in about what the mentor's been working on goes into the database, and that staff person working with that consumer, it's under the consumer's name, so they can see what's going on if they want to go look there. But we want to know from the mentee's point of view, right? And so we really encourage them. So some staff are really good about it because they want to know what's going on outside of their control. Other staff don't, it's hard to get them roped into remembering to do that. So then that's another thing April does with her time, is cajole the staff and kind of gently bug them to get that done so that we can see from both sides how is it working.
And I mean, we all have a lot of paperwork to do, so sometimes it's one more piece of paperwork. But when you're talking about really knowing whether this is working or not, this is the only way we could know, is by asking people what worked, what didn't.
So she triggers the report to let them know who it is that's coming up for one of these evaluations. And the other thing is, okay, the information was overwhelming to put together and to do something with. And so we had a volunteer and an intern that worked on, and a staff person who's really good with the computer that helped us get it into a Google Doc document, and then be able to take the data that comes out, which is still a bunch of data, and make it into some reports that were actually useful. So it'd be something I could look at and know what's going on a little bit from it. So that we've just done over the last couple of years, and it's made ability to, again, speak about the outcomes and know the health of the program much better.
We also have evaluations that we do with people in our mentoring group. So just because they're coming into a group doesn't mean you shouldn't be asking them what's working in the group, what do you like, what do you don't like, what topics do you want presented. All of those things you still want to know. Are you getting something? Are your goals being met from this group? So again, we can't know that unless we're asking people and using those evaluations.
And usually about annually, I will send something out to staff to see from their perspective how is the volunteer program going. And again, it's going so well they don't bother to respond half of the time, right? But partly how I know it's going well is by how many people are participating in it on a regular basis, and that kind of thing helps me know that. So that's the other piece, is trying to get some objective information to be giving feedback to the volunteer coordinator that she needs to know about, how she can improve her job too.
You talk about a program that I'm sorry, when you talk about a program that helps keep track of everything, are you talking about access? Is that, or is this a certain program that you have?
The evaluations, we make a Google Doc survey. It's like a survey.
A survey, okay.
Yeah, it's like a survey. What's the other one that's?
Survey Monkey.
Yeah, I like Survey Monkey.
Okay.
That asks the question. So now it's in that, and then that puts it all together for us. And then you can take that data that can come out in a spreadsheet, but it's all individual data, and you can do some summary reports out of it. And that we've just been. That was a long-range project that we've just moved through.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and from the peer mentors...
And we are happy to share how we did that
definitely.
with you.
From the peer mentors perspective, I mean, it just simplified the whole process. I'm not having to mail something out to them or email it.
Or call them and have a third person call them, because we wouldn't want April to call them. We want a third person to call them to get objective information. So it used to be a lot more time-consuming. Plus, over the last few years, much more of our mentors are computer literate and using that kind of stuff now. So if there's somebody that isn't, we will do it manually, and we'll have an intern or a different staff person do the calling.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, that's one thing I will not do with the peer mentors. That's if you want to get questionable outcomes.
Yeah, it's an anonymous. Yeah. the program evaluation is anonymous. It's not anonymous asking how the
Right.
mentor match is going, because we know who's doing what with who. So that we know. And we want them to know they're communicating to us and we're checking in. So they know we care about what they're doing. We're not throwing them up to the wolves.
So again, I mean, really this early evaluation and regular evaluation, it really does lead to more successful matches, more successful outcomes. And we modified the program based on the feedback, so if somebody's in our group and says, why haven't you done a presentation about this? We need this. Then I'm going to take that feedback, and if I can't do it, I'm going to figure out how we get it done. So a good example of this was recently done some surveys and asking people what presentations, and a couple people came back and said, we need a presentation on living wills and documents that do not resuscitate. And I was like, well, guys, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to bring somebody in that specializes in special needs trusts and documents like that. And so that was them saying, hey, we need this, why haven't you done this? And so it's my job to really follow up and make sure we have it and figure out how to offer it. So plus, it gives me a lot of ideas because, and we'll talk more about groups tomorrow, but at some point when you're facilitating groups and you're doing presentations and you have topics, you run out of ideas. And so why not have the people you're working with give you ideas about what to do next? So I get a lot of good suggestions from the people in the group about what they want to see happen in the group.